Hello, welcome back to Nation Drive. Today, what we're going to be discussing is the worst 3 tests I've ever examined. So, for starters, we've got number 1. The test that I'm going to talk about was a young man who was extremely nervous, and this showed quite a lot. When this young man was driving, he was making several mistakes very early on. The test roughly lasted around about 10 minutes, which is not a long time. Now, in that 10 minutes, that driver had 3 dangerous faults and 7 serious faults, and multiple driving faults, around about 12, I think, in 10 minutes. Now, it was clear to me that that young man wasn't ready to drive, okay? So he had serious faults for trying to run a red traffic light. He had serious faults for traveling too close to cars. On top of that, he got multiple driving faults for not driving to the speed limit, so appropriate speed. He got multiple driving faults for driving over the speed limit, so doing 30 and 20s, and he got a serious fault for that in the end as well. This was all in the space of 10 minutes. Now, if you're not ready for your driving test, it will show, like it did for him. It was pretty rough indeed, to the point where, in the end, I terminated the driving test and walked back to the driving test centre because that young man was not ready to pass his driving test and he was causing a potential hazard for the general public. The second driving test lasted roughly 5 seconds. Get that. One of the quickest driving tests I've ever been a part of. This was in COVID, when if you failed your driving test, you went straight back to the test centre, and that was that. Now, on this driving test, it was a young man again. We were driving out of the test centre car park, and I advised the learner to turn right out of the parking space and then turn left at the end of the car park. So, as the learner's moving out, he's driving straight, he's looking right. What he didn't see was another learner driver had actually started moving from the left-hand side, and he had not noticed them. So as that learner drove out, the car got closer and closer to the point where I had to brake for the learner and stop them because they weren't actually looking where the car was. So immediate fail, less than 5 seconds basically of a whole driving test. I reversed him back into the bay, advised him that he hadn't passed his driving test, to which he was very dismayed. He didn't understand what he did wrong. And also to the point where he actually brought his mum back at dinner time to complain that he'd failed his driving test in the space of 5 seconds. Now, I advised his mum what he did, and his mum kindly smiled and went, "I'm really sorry. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Thank you for your time, and we'll book another one shortly." So, that young man had a smirk on his face throughout. He started kicking off in the test centre. Again, you've got to make observations when you move out of a car parking space. It's not a free rein. You've got to make sure that when you're driving out of a car parking space, that it is clear from traffic that is currently established before you move out. Number 3. This was also a terminated test. This one's slightly different. The instructor that was the learner's instructor was sitting in the back. Before the test had even begun, that instructor put a thumbs down to me. I don't know about you, but when someone does that, you kind of get a bad feeling. So, during this driving test, the learner, who barely spoke English, it was very difficult to communicate with them. I was trying my best to communicate really slowly, but they they did not understand English pretty much at all. As we are driving through the test, instructor themselves popped his head through, and you're not allowed to speak on test, by the way, as an instructor. You have to sit in the back, be quiet, and not get involved. This instructor popped his head through the back seat here and said, "Would you like me to take over?" And I said, "I'm sorry? Would you like me to take over?" No, please don't speak again, basically. Please don't speak again. I was nice about it. Please don't speak again. You know the rules, sort of thing. As we got through this test, it was clear to me that this lady was not ready. She was driving across traffic at traffic lights when there was cars coming. She was not observing properly at junctions, almost crashed several times. She had several dangerous faults and several serious faults, to the point where I pulled her up on the left after she did something quite dangerous and almost turned right down a no entry sign onto a dual carriageway and stopped the test there and then. The instructor said, "I'm really sorry, she doesn't understand much English." I said, that isn't essentially my problem. I did my best to communicate with them. I was very slow in my talking. I was very clear with my instructions. I was very concise with my instructions. So yeah, that is the 3 worst tests I've been involved in as an examiner. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe. I do appreciate it, and thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one.